Hey, greetings. I see greetings from Germany this morning. I know we always have people all over the globe, which is really a cool thing for us. And I guess we switched over to daylight savings, so that makes us maybe a little bit later than we used to be. Great. Oh, and we have Teresa Marie Ryan on the line, which I was looking at her book with Teresa. It'd be great maybe if you want to share that with everyone on the chat, the a link to your book. I was reading her book this week for some inspiration on our presentation. So let's go ahead and we'll just go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about color and color schemes in DataGraph, and the presentation that I'm doing is actually one of the things that we want to do this month is to highlight aspects of DataGraph 4.6, which we recently released. So we'll have some of that intermixed with the presentation to talk about color and color schemes. And the first thing that I wanted to do is to briefly comment on what are we talking about when we talk about a color scheme. And certainly a color scheme is where we have different colors that have been selected, hopefully to form a nice color palette. And you see a simple example here of a color scheme that I created that has both the colors showing, and I'm also showing the hex code. So these are codes that provide information to our computers to know what color to actually represent. So it's the combination of red, green, and blue that are represented based on each two characters in the code represent each one of those. So again, here's a very simple one, but in terms of DataGraph, one of the things that we really are interested in is not just the colors themselves, though obviously we want to have nice looking color schemes and good color palettes, but the idea when I'm thinking about color schemes is that I'm typically thinking very much about how to take those colors to represent numerical values. So here we have just a screenshot of what we call the color scheme variable within DataGraph, where you have those same colors that I just showed you, but now you have them connected to a particular data value. And this, we're going to go into more detail, but just so you can understand a little bit about what you see here, because this is essentially a form of a table where you have each color listed within the color scheme. And this column here in the middle is telling me that this color is going to be connected to the number 1. And the next color is connected to the number 2. And I guess a little bit of a detail in terms of DataGraph, that the data values that are connected are shown in this aspect of this portion of the variable, but the next part shows us the what we would see in a legend if we use this particular color scheme and add it into a legend. Then you would see these text values or whatever I type within this portion of a color scheme variable is what we would show in the legend. So one of the things that DataGraph does is it has built into it a number of color schemes, or actually a whole suite of different color schemes. So if I take my color scheme variable and I click onto the gear menu that you see here, then you can get a list of color suggestions. And this just is a portion of some of the color suggestions that are there. And so from that perspective, what I'm not going to be going into a lot of detail on, actually, Teresa's book is a great place for this. I'm not going to be going into a lot of detail as to how do you compose and create a good color scheme for combining various colors, because what we've done is we've utilized a resource that's out there to populate this menu of different color schemes that you can use. So that's kind of the the main point of this presentation is kind of showing you where these color schemes come from, what they represent, how you can use them, and some of the tricks within DataGraph that help you really use them quickly and effectively. One of the things that I particularly really love about using the color scheme within DataGraph is how quickly I can change those colors to use them in multiple graphs. So I would like to show you one example, and this is a file that is on the online examples that are within DataGraph. So now you can see a DataGraph file where we have a number of different graphs that are created, and these 3 graphs all have the same color scheme. And down in the bottom corner here, this is where you see this color scheme variable, and we refer to it as a variable because of the fact that I can use these within multiple different graphs. And the point I just want to make here, just to introduce you to why is it worthwhile to spend time to learn about this within DataGraph, because if I change my mind and I decide this isn't the color scheme I want after all, I can click on this gear menu, get this list of color suggestions. Actually, I'm not sure if, given the way Zoom works, if you can see the overlay of the menu right now, but I'll go ahead and just pick a new color scheme, and then you can see very quickly how all of the colors within my graphics have changed. So this is so much easier than having to go in and change each individual graph to change each individual color. I can also change these tiles by clicking on them, and I get the color menu, that's color picker, which we'll talk about a little bit, that's within the Apple program, and I could change one individual color. So now you can see how everywhere that the letter A, this is a way of categorically representing this data, that A is represented now by blue. So in each one of my graphs, I have my points graph here where the A values, the A group is represented by blue. Same thing with my pie chart. My box plots have the same thing, and there's also a bar chart that has this as well. So not every command within DataGraph has the ability to utilize the color schemes, but a lot of them do. So you can do a lot with the various color schemes. How did you add the color menu? And I don't know if you're referring to the, so there's a question on adding the color menu. Did you mean the, actually, I guess I can just answer the question in a couple of different ways. So if you're referring to the actual the list of colors that you see here, then this is something that will certainly, yeah, okay, just getting a confirmation on the Q&A. So this variable itself can be added in a couple of different ways. I'm going to show you how you can add it very quickly from the actual commands when you're using it, but it's just one of the variables that you can add here. So if you look at this other drop-down menu and you click that menu, there is a color scheme option where you would create one of these from scratch. And when you do that, then you have the ability to build this table one line at a time, where there are these plus buttons here where you can add different lines. I could click on these and change the colors. And then again, if I click the gear menu, I get these color suggestions that I can then pick from to populate the colors. And the way in which we match the data to the colors is something that we have a lot of control over. So in this one, you'll notice how it says the word match. This is matching the actual categorical text, the text A to A. Here, this is a value match, using the both words, but you're connecting numerical values to the colors. You can also use ranges. So we'll go into a little bit more detail on that, but that just at least shows you, just to start off, where do these color variables come from and how do you create them? So what I want to do first is I want to talk about the color schemes themselves, and specifically, where does this color menu come from? So again, you click on this gear menu, you get all these different color suggestions. These are not color schemes that we specifically have come up with, but this is from a website and from work that's been done by a researcher in this field. Her name is Cynthia Brewer. And let me just go ahead and now switch my view here. And we're going to talk about Color Brewer. There's a link that got posted on the chat if you're interested in checking out the website yourself. I just have a few screenshots here just to show you, again, where these colors come from, what the basis is for them. Again, this is her name is Cynthia Brewer, is the researcher who came up with these. And if you go to that website, then you'll see images like the one that you see here. And this is a great resource actually for color schemes that allow you to generate them. Now, I guess I'll just say right away that you don't have to go there to generate all of the color schemes that you want to use, because this is what we've built into DataGraph already. So all these color schemes are already in there. I just want you to understand where they come from, and certainly give credit to Cynthia Brewer for all the work that she's done to create the Color Brewer approach and technique. So just a couple of points here that I wanted to make. First of all, if you go to the website, you'll notice that up in the top corner that you have a number of different things that you can do to generate a color scheme. You'd pick the number of classes or colors that you want. You pick the nature of your data. So this is whether you have a color scheme that, in the terminology here, is whether it's sequential or diverging or qualitative. Talk about that in a moment and show you some examples. And then you pick a specific color scheme, and what Color Brewer does is it gives you those codes. You can either get them in the hex code format, or you can get the actual red, green, blue components that you could also use for importing that into another program. And then there's a number of other options available, whether the color scheme is colorblind safe, print friendly, or photocopy safe. Those are all things that you can check for the various color schemes that are in there. And this is just another version of those color schemes that you can see here, where again, when you do this, you'll see the map view shown. And I guess I should just say that the Color Brewer itself, if you look at the background associated with this and read up on it a little bit, these were derived for mapping purposes. DataGraph doesn't have mapping in it at this point, something we've been thinking about a bit, but the color schemes themselves are still very, very useful for us. And to go into a little bit more detail in terms of what the color schemes look like, again, you have these sequential color schemes where they go from a lighter hue to a darker hue, but all within the same color. There's also these diverging colors where you would have colors that go from a hot to a cold, for example. And the ones at the end are the qualitative colors. And this is just a screenshot from the website if you want to get more information. But they just give some examples of how you might use these, where the sequential color schemes would be good for numerical values or ranges of numerical values. And some other examples here in terms of the diverging could also be used for numerical values, but again, where you want something indicated as above or below a particular level. And then more categorical types of data would be appropriate to link to the qualitative types of color schemes. In terms of those particular categories, there's a limit to the number that you can get. So in Color Brewer, you input how many colors you're looking for, and for each of these different types of color schemes, they have a certain number available. So the sequential has 9, diverging has 11, and the qualitative has 12. And the reason that I highlight the qualitative here is because this is what we use in our default color menu. So if you notice, these are all the different qualitative color schemes that Color Brewer has available, but I've highlighted the one that we use by default for our fill colors and the ones that we use by default for the line colors. So these just come directly from Color Brewer. Notice that in terms of being colorblind friendly and being printer friendly, that it varies depending on the color scheme, whether it is or it isn't. So the qualitative color schemes actually are not good for if you're concerned about representing for in terms of color blindness. So something certainly to keep in mind in terms of the menu that we have. But if you look here and you're familiar with DataGraph and you're familiar with the built-in color menu, then these colors should look very familiar to you. And we're certainly going to look at that in more detail. I just wanted to also note that there are there's more information for sure on the Color Brewer approach and how to use some of these color schemes. This is just, again, a screenshot of a more recent version of one of the books that she has talking about those methods. On the right-hand side, this is our default drop-down color menu, and these colors, again, are also from the Color Brewer. Now, there's other colors here that we have. You have the pen color, the point color, the axis color. These are all things that you can set specific colors to. There's also a color that we have by default for the error bars. We have a red color, and the background canvas color is something that you can use. And you'll also notice in the color menu that there is an option to get to the color picker. And I guess just quickly, why do we even have this color menu within DataGraph? And part of this is really just for convenience, to make it easy for you to have a color scheme that's accessible from all of your graphics. There's also some tricks I'm going to show you as to how you can change these colors very easily. But if every time you wanted to change a color, you always had to go into the system color picker, that would be tedious. So that's one of the reasons we have these colors set up the way that they do, or that we do. And in fact, just to, I guess, summarize, the key features for this is that you can customize them across multiple commands. You can copy to other graphs in the same file or different files. So when you change the color menu in a particular graph, those colors can be copied. And again, you can apply this to all your graphs at once to make it really easy to, if you decide you want to change a particular color, you can do that. So this menu, again, it's a built-in drop-down menu, but it is something that you can customize as well. And here's just, for example, what these colors look like, the default line colors. If you go into DataGraph and look at what a plot command looks like, where we're plotting X values and Y values, there's this color tile that you can click on, and here's the menu again that will pop up when you click on that color tile. So you could individually change each one of those lines to different colors. This is what the bar graph looks like if you have data that's in a tabular format like you see here, and we use the bars command, which creates the side-by-side bars, then it will automatically actually fill in the bars with these color. The plots that I showed you, that you would have to do yourself. But this is an automatic option or automatic setting within the program that it uses those fill colors. And again, if I go into that, into a bars command and I expand it out just to look at the details, there are all these color tiles in there. And if I click on any of these color tiles, this color menu is what I'm going to see pop up. And I see there's a question, how do you copy the colors to another graph? And so I'll I'll show you that. I'm going to open up this an example file in a moment, and I'll show you how to do that. So let me just before I open the example file, let me just point out a couple of things that we're going to look at. Primarily, where do we change this color menu? Because this is one of the things that I think is an important message for everyone using DataGraph, because what I have found is that even people who've used the program for a while may not be aware that you can customize those colors that are in that drop-down menu. And specifically, if you go into the style settings, open that up, you will see a color menu option. If you have DataGraph on your computer now and you want to open that up and look in this section of the style settings, this is basically like an overall style sheet for your graph. That if you don't see the words color menu here, and I think maybe it just says colors, that means you're not on DataGraph 4.6. So this is a tiny change really compared to what's in the program, but we did, to just try and make this a little bit clearer, you'll see that this now says color menu there to indicate that this is where you can change the colors that are in that menu. And looking at that a little bit in a little more detail, if you hover your mouse over any of these tiles, then a tooltip will pop up indicating what menu option that is. And you'll see here, for example, if you hover over the green, this will say line color 3. Now, notice that, or just be aware of the way that these are organized, the line colors and the fill colors are not something that we mean to impose on you. You can use any of these colors for any of the commands that you're creating or graphs that you're creating within DataGraph. There's obviously some limit to the number we wanted to have in this menu. So we have 6 line colors and 6 fill colors. And you can use them in any way you want. You know, they're called line color 1, 2, 3. If you want to use the line colors for fill colors and vice versa, it's completely up to you. It's just an internal way to keep these organized within the program and to, you know, give some structure to the color menu. Now, for any of these, when you modify them, there's really 2 ways to modify these color settings. One is just to click on a color tile, and then you get this default color picker within the program. But you can also use presets that are set up within DataGraph. And that's what I'll show you that now, and then show you how you can copy these between graphs. So here is this file that has these default colors set up in them. And if I go into my style settings, again, I see now here's my color menu. And the quickest way to change these colors would be just to click on this presets menu, and you'll see how there is a representation of each one of the color tiles across on each line. And if you, like, for example, if you just wanted this to all be in black and white, I can click that. It's going to change all of the line colors to black, and the fill colors here are going to be changed to the grayscale. And if I wanted to apply this selection to my other graph that I have within this file, there's a couple of different ways I can do it. I can actually just click my style settings and do a Command C to copy Command V into my other graph that I have here. But actually, probably the easiest way, just to make this clear, is that the gear menu on my style setting has an option for setting the same style for every graph. And when I do that, and now I look at my bars, you can see that now these also have that grayscale. We're talking about color, so let's do something a little more colorful. If I want to change to this different color palette here, again, these also come from Color Brewer. I can change that, go into my gear menu, set same style for every graph, and now my lines also are in that color palette. And again, if I want to, I can change individual colors that I have here. I can, click on this color, use any of these options that are within the color picker. There's a color wheel in here in case you haven't used that. And again, it's going to change interactively. You can also type in values for the hex code. If you get a hex code somewhere that has a particular color, you could input that and put that into your color scheme, or you can select the colors that are here. So a number of different ways to change the colors and apply them across your various graphs. And again, if I change my mind and I decide I want to go back to the color scheme that was there, I can go ahead and click on one of these schemes to go ahead and do that. So hopefully that sort of answers the question. And again, you could be going in and you could change the colors, go into here, change the colors within the graphs itself. So notice how, for example, these two lines are both set to line color 1. I can change this one to be set to line color 2, and now that's using that color within the color scheme. So my individual command, I could go in here and I could go to the color picker and I could pick, some color that I want for that particular line, but now it's no longer connected to the color scheme that's within my style setting. So this is one of the themes in general that we try and make sure people are aware of, that by really getting familiar with these style settings, you can really save yourself a lot of time down the line if you just decide to change things. Because if I went in and did each one of these individually and then decided to change them later on, that would be very tedious. So it is good to try and use the style settings to modify your colors and keep them connected to there. So hopefully that helps to at least show you how to change the colors in terms of individual graphs. So if I didn't quite answer your question, then let me know, but we're still going to apply the colors with the color schemes. Again, this is just the color menu and using the style settings as they are set up within the program. What I want to talk about actually a little bit before we get into the color schemes themselves is I want to point out to you some differences between color tiles and the color menus. And this is a little bit of a detail within the program, but again, to really use these effectively, I think it's important to understand how these work, and will in the long run definitely help to save you time. So let me go ahead and I'll go back to the presentation. So we're going to talk a little bit about color tiles and color menus. And there's a screenshot right here, just an image showing you when I'm referring to color tiles, I'm referring to the colors as I was just looking at them within the style setting, where you have a square around the object that represents the color, as opposed to a color menu, where the color menu shows you the little menu icons on the right-hand side. If you look within the style settings, there's actually both color menus and color tiles. So all of the settings that you see right now, where these are all highlighted, these are all actually the color menus. And these include both the font colors, the axis color, and the grid line color. So you can see each one of those highlighted here. And just to point out again, in this location, this is where you see all the color tiles. So we've already talked a bit about the color menu itself, but you also have color tiles for these other aspects of how you control the colors on a graph within the program. So you have a pen color, you have a point color, and you have the font color. We're not going to talk as much about the font colors But it is just important to, again, to see kind of globally how all these things are set. But knowing that where you see the menus, we'll go back and show everything now, that the menus are really allowing you to select from this other set of colors. So I'm not sure if that's entirely clear, but let me go on to the next slide and we'll demonstrate a little bit, hopefully to show you what some of the differences are. So first of all, when you click on a color tile, that will open up the color picker. So this is where you're setting this color. And in some ways you can think of these color tiles that are in the style settings as individual color variables, where you set that color in the color menu, or the pen color, for example, which is used to draw your colors for all sorts of different things on your graphic, your axis lines, your grid lines. But you set that color, and that can then be used in other places and selected within the menu itself. Whereas the color menus that you see here are again representing kind of a pass-through that a color has been selected. And specifically, if you notice the way that the icons are set up, we have a pen variable here, for example, that when that is the selection within the color menu, you'll see this little icon that looks like a pen being drawn down on a piece of paper. The point color is something that's in the style setting. That is, if that's selected, you'll notice that the menu icon itself has a little circle to indicate it's the point color that's selected. Color menu options that are, like I was showing within the plot commands, those are going to be this drop-down menu. And then when you have, for example, for fonts, they often have this tile that has an arrow. This is a same as setting. Basically, that's indicating that the color is coming from one of the style settings. So you've set the color for something the same as a label color or one of the other font colors that's in that style menu. In any case, anytime you click on one of these color menus, it's going to open up the full menu from which you can then select a different color. So, I guess a couple of other things that are important to realize. So our color picker is something that we can still access from the color menu itself. So here, if I have something that's set to the pen variable, but I want to now choose a custom color for that option, I can click on the menu and choose the option of the color picker. That will bring me to here, where I can then choose a custom color within the color picker. And then you'll notice how the menu option changes a little bit. It's actually now kind of this combination of a color tile and a color menu, because you can still go to the next slide. You can still click on the tile portion to get to the color picker, or click on the menu portion to get to the menu to change those options as well. So I know this is a little bit of detail, but as you use the program, I think understanding this is very helpful to kind of get a sense of how you can modify these. And then finally, the other thing that I want to point out to you is how you can copy these selections. And it's actually very convenient, because anytime you set a color tile, those color tiles themselves, you can click them and drag them and drop them on another color tile, and it will apply that color to it. So here in this example, it's just showing the pen color, dragging and dropping that onto another color tile would copy that color. You can do the same type of action with a color menu, but it requires you to also hold down the command key. So if you have one color menu set to a particular value and you want to copy that to another color menu, just hold down the command key, click and drag and drop, and that will copy it. So I would actually like to illustrate that for you. So let me just go back to the file that we were in. if I go back to my line colors, for example, and I have all these different commands that were used to create these. Actually, maybe just quickly for those of you who, you know, just to, so you can see how do I even create this in case you're new to the program. If I highlight all my data here and I click on to create a new graph and I click on the plot command, every time I click, notice how it's drawing one line with one of the sets of data. And I have this group here on the left-hand side. That is my category that's shown. I guess a little bit of a detail for those of you who might notice this is a text value that is actually being used as my x-axis. So I've within the data definition list, I can click here to open this up. We can see this column that is a text column, but if you open this up, there's a way to basically encode that text value to a numeric value. So here I've selected that the row number, that if I try and use this text column as in a place where numbers would be needed, I'm going to be using the row number for that. So again, maybe a little bit of a detail, but for anyone who noticed and is wondering, how are you using a text column to plot something on an x-axis? That's how that's done. Anyway, so for any of these, again, I can go and select a color from my color menu, but if I select a color and then I want to copy that to another command, I would hold down the command key on my keyboard, click and drag and drop, and now I've just copied that color tile. Again, so when you have the menu, you click on the menu and drag and drop it, and I can apply that color. If you're within the color tiles, it's a little bit easier because I can, again, just drag my color and drop it onto another color tile, and now I've changed that color within my style settings. So again, just a really handy thing to be aware of, that you can do this with any of the colors that you can see. And in fact, if I open this up, you'll see, again, here's one of these pass-through colors. I can select colors here and do the same thing. This is something I could hold down the command key and click and drag. So there's all sorts of ways to make this a little bit easier to do these settings. So because, like, for example, if I wanted to set my font colors to be the same as my line colors for some label, then again, this is something where I wouldn't necessarily want to have to always click the menu. I could just click the command, drag and drop and change the color. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to move in more to talking about utilizing the color schemes and going beyond the color menu, because it is very convenient to be able to use the color menu to control your colors, to apply the color menu to other graphs. And you can actually just take this, and if you hit, it may not be completely obvious, but if you hit Command C and then go to another graph here and do Command V. Actually, I guess I don't have these set to all these different line colors, so it's not that interesting, but you'll see how the menus will be those same colors. But you can do that between files. So you don't have to do that within the same file. You can highlight actually you can do that with any of these style settings. You can highlight all of them, do copy and paste into the same file or into different DataGraph files. So now let's move on to the last section that I have here, which is talking about color schemes. Okay, so here you see the color menu that we started out with in the beginning, where we're seeing all of these different types of color schemes that we have available within DataGraph. key features associated with the color scheme, there's a number of them that we've already alluded to, but just to make clear, the color scheme variable allows you to do this data-driven design because the colors can depend on numerical values, they can depend on text data. We can quickly create these from commands. I'll show you how to do that. Again, this uses these color brewer color schemes, and we can apply these then to multiple commands and also copy them to other files. So if you do create a custom color scheme with colors that you like, then you can move those between different files pretty easily. Okay, so here, for example, this is actually, I guess, sort of reiterating some of the stuff we talked about in the beginning. You can see that this here is this file with these color schemes. I have my color scheme variable here on the left-hand side, and this is an example of the colors being linked, again, to a categorical type of data. The specific column in my table that's being used here is this group column that is a text type of column, and within these commands, that's what's selected in terms of keying the colors to that column of data. We also can use more sophisticated color schemes. So here's an example where a color scheme is being used. This is one of those diverging color schemes. So we have X and Y points that are being plotted, and then we have this third variable that we're representing with the color scheme, my Z data that I have here. And if you notice in the color scheme variable itself, then it's showing us different ranges of numerical values that are being coded into different colors. And when you go into these menus, you'll see also that it will tell you whether or not the range is, or the edges, the numerical values on that range are going to be greater than, or greater than and equal to, or less than and equal to, or just less than. You have a lot of control over that as well. And we've talked now about these color tiles. So again, if we go back to kind of what the color scheme itself looks like, then the color tile is something within the color scheme itself that we can click on and be able to change what those colors are. Okay, I thought I had some other aspect on this particular image, but I don't see it here. So anyway, one of the other things that to point out that's new, and I noticed actually some of our screenshots online don't have this yet for the color schemes, but the fact that you now have this transparency option that I think is very useful. So that's something that I'll try and show you how that works. So that is a new option within DataGraph 4.6. So here you can see, again, the mapping of the color schemes as you see them in DataGraph to where they originate from in Color Brewer, where we have the qualitative, sequential, and divergent color schemes are all things that are within the program. And we can click on the gear menu not only to get color suggestions, but there are also suggestions here for how the bins are created. So here, for example, these are numerical values that are being placed into specific bins in terms of how the color is being connected to these values. And if you explore that gear menu when you are using numerical values for your color scheme, then you'll see how it shows you the stride that's there, and you can click those different values to change the number of colors that are shown within your color scheme. This is a really handy thing to be able to do, and it's worth just sort of playing with that a little bit to see how that works and kind of get used to that functionality. What I also want to point out to you, though, is that once you have a lot of categories, you're not going to see as many suggestions in that color suggestions menu. Anytime you exceed over 12 color tiles, you're exceeding the number of colors that are in the Color Brewer color scheme. What we do have is we have a couple of options that will be there no matter how many colors that you have. For example, the rainbow color map is one that will always be there. So you can have, actually, I'm not certain if there may be some limit that it does go up to, but you can have a lot of different categories and still apply that rainbow color map. Now, if any of you have followed the literature, then I'm sure that you're aware of the fact that there's been criticism of the rainbow color map in the literature, and just a quick searching on the rainbow color map, and you will definitely find some valid concerns for the fact that if you're using that to represent continuous colors, then you may be distorting the impression of a particular type of data by using the rainbow color map. I'm not going to go into detail on that. In fact, I should also mention, we also have a color ramp variable. We're going to talk about that in another presentation, and we'll talk more about the rainbow color ramp. But for doing particularly categorical data, if you have a lot of categories, then being able to quickly apply the rainbow color map to get different colors for the categories is actually really convenient. So there are definitely uses for the rainbow color map. But again, just something to sort of be aware of. So a couple of last things before I do a little bit more of a demo within the program. I would definitely recommend going onto our website, into the forum, and if you search on color scheme within the knowledge base, there's a page there that will step you through how to create these from scratch and give you some pointers on that. And there's some GIFs on there to show you, again, how to do this, so that even after this presentation, I would, if you want to get more information, that's a great place to go. And if you go into the online examples and search on the word color scheme or just scheme, there's a number of examples there that utilize color schemes that you can check out. And one of the ones that's shown here is actually the file that we've used. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to show you a little bit more about how we can create and modify these color schemes using one of the examples that I've shown you as a screenshot. So here we have a bunch of data that's plotted in this scatter graph where I have a color scheme that's shown. So let me just start by showing you how did I create this. So first of all, this is just data I have a random number generator here within an expression that's creating all of these columns. I have 1,000 numbers here that are created. And if I want to show you how did I do this from scratch, then I took my X and Y data and I used a points command to plot all of these points. And then within the actual points command itself, if I expand this, you will see how there are a number of different options related to how I represent these points. And the points command is really great for being able to, again, connect different aspects of my graph to some aspect of my data, to have it be a data-driven graphic. So here, there is a marker setting where I can pick individual markers, and there is also a color setting. So you can see, again, the color here, this would be connected to that pen. It has that pen on a paper sort of look to it, but I could change this and have my outer color be something different. I could also change my inner color to be something different. But again, that's changing each point the same. If I want to use the color scheme, then I'm going to use this part of my command here, and there's a separate setting for the color as well as for the fill color. So the fill is the inside the marker, the color is the color that's used as the outline. So let's use the fill color and say I want to base this on one of my columns of data. And actually, I think just so you can really see the effect, we'll use the X value to create a color scheme. So let me just, I'll minimize the scheme that's there right now. So when you select a column, I'm going to say select based on X data, my scheme. There is one that's already there, but you can say create color scheme. And that automatically created this color for all of the points that are within my graphic. Now it did just go ahead and use the rainbow color map because the number of bins that it created, it exceeded 12, so it defaulted to the rainbow color map. But I don't have to use that many bins. I said before how if I click on this gear menu, then there's options for the stride or the number of bins, and it actually will tell you if you want 5 as your stride, your distance between each of the numbers that are within my color scheme. Then there's 14 entries, but I can use a stride of 10. I'll select that. So now notice that my number of entries within my color scheme variable have decreased quite a bit. The program doesn't reset the colors that are in line within those tiles. So it took the top, what was, however many that I guess that was 8, took the top 8 to fill in this color scheme. So if I click on this gear menu again and say color suggestions, now you will see all of the color Brewer color suggestions that are here. So I can have this be any of these, either qualitative or again sequential. In some ways this is really the way that these data are numerically are sort of set up for one of these diverging types of color schemes, because my random numbers are around 0. So in any case, this is this would be how you would create this, and then I can again easily at any time change the number of bins, and I can change how many colors I have. And if I, one thing that's also sort of interesting about the color schemes, because I can easily change an individual tile like this, if I want that particular, if I'm looking for a particular color or particular values or some cluster of data that has a particular attribute associated with it, this is kind of an interesting way to be able to hone in on data too, not just for representing the data, but also for really exploring the data. And then I can go back to my command, and right now the color is with the X values, which is why you see the color uniform across my data. But I could change this and have it be on this Z column, which is just, again, a random number. So my colors are sort of randomly distributed here. But again, it's very easy for me to do that. And if I decide to change my color scheme, I can go ahead again and change it here. Now this other graph that you see is also changing the size of the points based on the color scheme. And the other thing that it's doing is that it has this transparency setting. Again, this is new within the new version. So when you have a lot of points that are overlapping, being able to change the transparency for all of them at once, I think is a really, really nice feature. You can still go into a color tile and change the transparency or opacity for that particular tile. And you can see how it will change what the tile looks like when it has transparency associated with the individual tile. And then the total transparency will, for that particular tile, will be both based on the global transparency for the scheme as well as the individual tile. So I did want to see if there were any other questions. In the last time that we have, what I wanted to do actually was show you a little bit more about when you're creating a color scheme based on some type of text-based data. So actually, let me just hide the data that you see here, and we'll just quickly set up a a very simple example where if I have some text, so here's my ABC, we'll just convert that to a text column. So if this is my some type of group, and then again, I have some kind of, we'll just do the very simple thing here. So, and say I'm going to, yeah, here's my value. Sorry. I should maybe change these. So what I want to show you is how, again, even when I create a color scheme, once it's created, I can go ahead and change that color scheme pretty easily. So here I have these points that I want to just plot them in a line. So I'll go ahead and just make a points command that shows those individual points. Let me increase the size of them a bit. And I want each of these points coded based on the group that you see here. So this is similar to what we did before, where I'm going to say my fill value, I want to depend on the column group, and I have to either choose a color scheme or create a new color scheme. And then you see the colors there that have changed. And I can go ahead again and go into the color suggestions, and I can change what these colors are that are being set here. Now, what I want you to see is what happens when I add in some new data and create a new some new data for that. So this is also what I'm doing here, I guess, is I'm creating some data that's in an elongated format. Instead of having different columns for each one, I'm having one column of values and one column that's categorical. And this is really, when you're having big data sets, this is really the best way to have the data structured. But you might create a color scheme and go back later and add additional data that's not in that color scheme. So one of the really convenient things here is to click on the gear menu, and there's an option for unique text values. And when you click on that, it will check everywhere that that color scheme is being used, and it will make sure that every unique value is represented within your scheme. Again, it doesn't reset the colors themselves. I still have to click the gear menu, go to my color suggestions, and go ahead and set what I would like those colors to be. But because it looks to, again, every command, so even if you have different commands that are using that color scheme, it will make sure that all of the values that need to be represented are present, and then you can just reset the colors. So I'm not seeing any questions right now on the Q&A, but please, if anyone, if anyone has any, we can stick around just for a little bit and see if there's any burning questions related to color. Again, I thank Teresa for joining in, and it was fun this week reading through your book, Teresa. If you're still there, I actually meant to have a copy of it here to show to people, and I forgot to grab that. But I particularly enjoyed kind of reading about the beginning of color theory and some of the work that was done a long time ago, and the initial understanding of colors and kind of the battles between the understanding the physics of color versus the color being used by artists and painters. I thought was really interesting. And again, I think Teresa, you did a nice job with describing that in the book. So anyway, thank you for joining. Thanks so much for the positive feedback. We are recording this. Hopefully the recording has come out okay and will be available on YouTube. And if you, of course, have any other questions or want to let us know, then please. Oh, actually, one moment. Someone just brought me Teresa's book, so I can show this to you. And it's a nice, a compact book that has a lot of information. So there's a lot of great detail here. And the YouTube link, I don't know if there's someone still there that can show that. But one of the things that I actually thought would be fun to do for this that I didn't have a chance to do is to do a little bit of one of the things that I know that Teresa, that you do a lot of work in, is taking images from nature, you know, pictures that you've taken with interesting colors and then creating color schemes from that. There was a lot of detail to cover, so I didn't have a chance to do that, but that's one of the things that I think would be fun to do for either a different demo or a lecture. We have, although the leaves are falling on our trees right now in North Carolina, we had some nice fall color earlier in the month, or well, end of last month, I guess. And the YouTube link, if you actually go on our DataGraph website, there's a link, I believe, on it should be on all of our pages, that certainly on the help site, that will link you to the DataGraph YouTube channel. In fact, if you go on YouTube, there is a DataGraph. You can search DataGraph one word on YouTube and our channel should come up. We also, I guess, just as a plug, and that's a good point. Someone just said to stop. Let's see, I want to make sure I don't end our whole meeting here. Let me stop sharing. Someone was saying that it was hard to see the copy of the book. So the title is Applying Color Theory to Digital Media and Visualization. Teresa Marie Rhine is the author, who also was here on our chat today, listening in. So maybe someday, Teresa, we can actually do more of an interview with you and talk about color and color choices a little bit more. So anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for your feedback and for joining us today. I guess Teresa did note that Adobe Capture is one of the apps that you can use to capture colors, pictures that you've taken, and then you can enter those into the program using the color variable as one way to save those selections and to use those in your graphics. So thank you very much. If you have the inkling, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate that. We're trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube because that allows us to add more links into the videos that we share with you. So please consider going ahead and following us on YouTube. Hopefully we'll get this, hopefully this video came out okay and we'll be able to post that very soon. And I think we have all of the questions answered for today. Next week, we're going to do another webinar and we're going to be talking about how you combine and compose graphs for publication. This is something that comes up quite a bit that people ask questions about. And there's some nice features, again, within the new version of DataGraph to try and help to make that easier for you. So anyway, thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a great weekend. Go ahead and end the meeting now.